Hello. This week, we're going to be thinking like a historian, and we're going to use primary sources to understand history. Now, primary sources and secondary sources are two different types of ways that we look at documents from the past. Okay. So, primary sources, if you're a primary source or you have something that's a primary document, primary source, it primary sources provide a first-hand account of an event or time period, okay? They represent original thinking, reports on discoveries or events, or they can share new information. These sources are created at the time the events occur, but they could also include sources that they are created later. Okay, they're usually the first formal appearance of the original research. Secondary sources usually involve analysis, interpretation, or evaluation of the primary sources. They often attempt to describe or explain primary sources. So, some examples of primary sources are diaries, um, birth certificates, biographies, interviews, speeches, government documents, okay? Creative artworks, pictures, newspaper advertisements. Now, some examples of secondary sources are textbooks, dictionaries, encyclopedias, uh, some newspapers, books that interpret, okay? So, all of the textbook material that you read in your book for social studies or for history, that is a secondary source. Okay. So today we're going to be looking at primary sources. So we're going to be looking at three different primary sources. We're going to look at a primary document, a primary photograph, and a primary artwork. Okay. So there are four steps that you can take to analyze these historical documents. So remember, to analyze is to break down or break apart. Okay. So we've got to really decide, what is this document, photograph, or artwork telling us about whatever it is that it's about. So the first thing we do is we're going to meet the document. Then we're going to observe its parts. Third, we're going to try to make sense of it. And then fourth, we're going to use it as historical evidence. And we're going to go through and explain how to do this. So, when you analyze a written document, all right, so this is like the Constitution, this is a letter, just some form of document. There are certain things you want to do first. So, the first things you're going to do is you're going to meet the document. Okay, you're going to see, are there any special markings on the document? Okay, and if so, then this is kind of like an outline. So, you're going to kind of want to identify if there are any special markings. You want to kind of ask yourself, is it handwritten or is it typed? And then you're going to want to write words that you don't know and look them up. Then you're going to want to observe it, okay? So, who wrote the document? Who read or received this document? And what is the date of the document? So, whenever you look at a document, a historical primary source, you want to be asking yourself these questions when you analyze it. You also want to try to make sense of it. What's the main idea of the document? Okay. List two words or quotes from the document that help support the main idea. Why do you think this document was written? Okay. Kind of making you think about what the document has and then using it as historical evidence. So you want to think of, where do you think you could find out more information? Where do you think it would, of who it was, or where can you just find more information about this document or event that it's portraying? So in the next slide, I have a document and we're going to go through each of these parts and we're going to analyze it. And then we'll do the same for a photograph and for an artwork. Because after this lesson, you are going to be given a document, a photograph, and a piece of artwork that you're going to have to analyze yourself using these four steps. Okay. All right. So this is the document that we're kind of looking at. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to meet the document. All right. We want to first look at it and say, are there any special markings on the document? And so over here, we're going to kind of identify. So we're going to circle all of these that apply. So do you see a stamp on this document? Yes. Do you see a postmark? Kind of telling you, like, it was posted on this day. I do not see one. Is it a handwritten note? I don't see a handwritten note. Um, I mean, I see a signature, right? So, I mean, possibly there is some handwriting on here. There's a date there that's handwritten. There's no official seal. So there's your stamp, and then the handwritten note would be the signature. Okay. There's no really official seal. The special letterhead, I don't really see one. I mean, this could be one, the Department of the Interior kind of showing, you know, this is who it's from. So they didn't have really pictures on papers in this time period. So, because I know it's in the 1914 and this looks like it's been typed as a typewriter, so they probably didn't have pictures that they could just upload. But I would say kind of as a header that shows you who the document is from. And then you want to ask, is it handwritten or typed, or is it both? Well, I'm looking at this and it looks typed to me. And then any words that I don't know, well, there's one word, it's pupils. Okay, it says, so this says, sir, acknowledging receipt of the calendar from your school, you are requested to submit at an early date a daily program for 1 week, which should provide for a study period, at least 3 evenings a week for all pupils in and above the fourth grade. Enclosed is a copy of a daily program that may offer suggestions in planning that part of your calendar. Respectfully, Second Assistant Commissioner. Okay. So this is obviously a letter, right? This was stamps received. But when I was reading it, pupils kind of like stood out to me. So pupils, I looked it up in the dictionary and it said a child or a young person in school. And that makes sense because it's talking about school, right? Because it even says here the Bidwell School. So when you look at a document, you're going to want to go through these steps. The next part is you're going to observe the parts of the document. So we want to look at who wrote this document, who read or received it, and then what is the date. So who wrote the document? Well, if I look at this, it's probably from this guy over here, right? So it shows, because it was a letter written. So the second assistant commissioner. And who read or received this document? Mr. Willard A. Fuller. And what is the date of the document? It looks like it's been stamped on January 23rd, 1914. Maybe that's when they read it. It looks like it was received on this day. And then it was, I don't know, it looks like it was answered on 2/16/14. So somewhere in January of 1914. Very interesting. Hmm. Well, now we're going to try to make sense of this document. So we want to look at what is the main idea of the document. Then we're going to want to list two quotes from the document to help support that main idea. And we're going to think, why was this document written? So I went through this and reading it through. To me, the main idea was to have Mr. Faller, it's like Fuller Faller, plan and send a daily program for 1 week from his school. Well, I know it looks like he's a teacher or principal or somebody, right, at this Fort Bidwell school, and it's talking about a week, right? So list two quotes that help support the main idea. Well, it says it's a daily program for 1 week. And then again, Fort Bidwell School, okay? Or Sidwell, Bidwell, Sidwell. It's really hard to see, it's so tiny. And why do you think the document was written? Well, it could be written to tell the principal or the teacher the requirements of how the school is to be outlined. I mean, I'm not really sure, but that's what I think. But what I think could be different from what you think. It just depends on how you perceive the document, how you look at it. Okay. And then we're going to use it as historical evidence. Where do you think we could find out more information about this event? Or where do you think we could find out more information about the persons who wrote or received this document? Well, I don't know. I could go to the school that the person received the document was from and find information from there. I mean, I have the name of the school here, right? And I could also go to a library and research what the schedules of Indian school was like in 1914 in Washington. Now, how did I know it was in Washington? Well, it's right here and it said Office of Indian Affairs. So it probably was an Indian, like reserve, like a Native American um, reserve. So there's schooling, and it was in Washington. So that's where I got those information from. So we just analyzed this whole document. There's so much that you can find when you're using documents. And eventually you'll be able to analyze documents to support an idea that you have. Okay. But that's later on. For now, we're just trying to look at the documents and analyze them. All right.